Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lost One podcast. As always, my name is Shenzo the Lost, and joining me again today is Shoshima 1016. So today we don't have Samurai with us today. Samurai has some other pressing matters. I believe it's actually his game night. Thursday nights are like his game nights.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it's not like important, you know.
Yeah, and I had to watch kids last night, so that's why it didn't happen on a normal night.
Yeah, well, you know, hey, how dare you guys like live lives and actually want to do stuff outside of create stuff for my channels? Like,
I know,
honestly,
right?
it's
Us rat bastards.
Yeah, it's really selfish. You know, you guys should really be ashamed of yourselves.
I know, right? Speaking of being ashamed, no.
Yeah.
Actually, last night was the first night, like, I was playing with the kids, and we started playing pretend.
Oh, yeah?
You know, and, because my son mentioned the cat pack.
Oh, there you go.
In the Paw Patrol universe.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there's, like, a Paw Patrol, like, EU at this point.
Probably.
But, yeah, I'm like, okay, we need to call the cat pack. So then I, like, grabbed my cell phone, and he didn't want to talk, so I had my daughter talk, and she's all, hello, talking into my phone. It was pretty great.
That's amazing. So thanks for sharing that. That's awesome. Love that little wholesome moments there. But, yeah, no, Paw Patrol's no joke, man. Like, I don't even have kids, and I know about Paw Patrol.
I knew Paw Patrol was a thing.
Yeah.
And then I didn't realize it's, like, a thing.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Like it's one of like the new generation of like children's stuff. I'd probably put it up there with like Thomas the Tank Engine, like Barney the Dinosaur, and you know maybe I wouldn't quite go Power Rangers because Power Rangers have been around for like 30 years, but it's like that same like craze among kids.
Yeah.
And the toys are super popular. That's actually how I know about them is like just walking around the store and just seeing like whole Paw Patrol sections.
Huh.
So it's pretty crazy. Like, but again, like time moves on, and sometimes they find something. I mean, and what kid doesn't like cute, adorable animals?
Well, yeah, because it's one part like my son loves trucks and cars and stuff.
Yeah.
And then my daughter, she seems to like animals and stuff more, but she does love anything my son loves.
Yeah. That's pretty typical. So
I think it's like a balance that the two of them just like, you know.
Yeah, there you go. Well, that's pretty cool. So believe it or not, we're not actually going to spend the whole episode talking about Paw Patrol.
Episode 30, the Paw Patrol episode.
Although, you know, we might have to. We might have to do a Paw Patrol episode at one point. Just, you know.
Bring in special guest, little Shoshima.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we can bring in, you know, the two minis. But yeah, no, today we actually want to talk about someone who was pretty impactful on both of us as teenagers, young preteens and teenagers, and into early adulthood. And that's John Cena. Who, you know, some of you may know now as a top-level actor who's been in, like the Transformers series, Fast and the Furious.
Fast and Furious. He's, oh my god. In Peacemaker.
Yeah. DC, yeah. Starring role in the Peacemaker series.
We have a very important franchise we're forgetting right now.
You were looking at something, and I'm like, he's thinking of something, and that we're like, there's something we're missing here. It's how could we forget? How could I forget? Comic book fan. Hello, I have to turn in my comic book fan card after that one.
I know, right?
I'm gonna edit that out.
He doesn't know how to edit.
hey! Just because it's true, do very minimal editing on this podcast. But yeah, we're going to talk John Cena. And, you know, before he was this top-level movie star, he was WWE's, like, poster boy. You know, now it's Roman Reigns. Beforehand, it was John Cena. And he kind of came after The Rock and Stone Cold left. He and Batista were the two who were, like, vying for those next positions. Randy Orton was in there, too, but, you know, they weren't really... Randy was never really, like, the guy until a bit later in his career.
Oh, okay.
Cena, though, it was pretty obvious, like, they strapped the rocket to him and just never let off.
Yeah, to the moon.
Yeah, and to the point where Super Cena became a thing, like, which is weird to think about, and we'll talk more about this, you know, when we kind of dive into that point in his career. Yes, Tanner, I love you too. Tanner's also here, everybody, and he is currently eating my hand, so I've only got this hand free right now. But, yeah, John Cena has a very interesting story, you know, from the beginning of his career to where he ended up now. And I just figured, let's talk about him. Because in addition to being this, you know, wrestler, movie star, he's also, I believe, the record holder for most wishes granted for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And, like, no one else is close to him. I think he's, like, over 700 at this point.
Oh, okay.
And I think, like, the next closest is, like, 500 was, like, the top when he like got involved with the program. Like getting to 500 was considered to be like the apex.
Oh, okay.
And now he's just in the class of his own. Like no one else is even close to him. And he did this all while working the WWE schedule, which we'll talk about a little bit on the podcast. But, we'll just kind of give a real brief overview of his career, and then we'll kind of talk about our experiences with him. So, John Cena is the man with two middle names. I believe his middle names are Anthony and Felix.
Oh, okay.
So his actual name is John Cena, but it's John Anthony Felix Cena, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
His dad is also involved in wrestling. I believe he usually plays a manager, and he actually appeared a couple times on WWE programming.
Oh, okay.
And there's some pretty funny stories involving his dad. His dad is a character, apparently.
Huh.
Edge and Christian used to have a podcast called the ENC Pod of Awesomeness, I think it was called.
Uh-huh.
And Edge told a really funny story about working with Mr. Cena, because I believe it's also John Cena Sr.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, there's a pretty funny story in that. If you haven't heard it, I highly recommend looking it up. We'll kind of cover it a little bit when we get there.
Okay.
But, John was, I believe he wanted to do, like, bodybuilding. Like, he was always a wrestling fan. I believe there's a picture of him floating around on the internet somewhere as a little kid holding up, like, a custom-made title. So, like a lot of, hardcore, wrestling fans,
Yeah, I mean, usually you have to be pretty dedicated to get to that level anyways.
Oh, absolutely. So. But it also involves a lot of luck, too, and timing, and, having that it factor.
No, correct.
That no one can really describe exactly what it is, but most people know it when they see it. Stone Cold has it, The Rock has it, Triple H has it, HBK, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so Cena, I think he initially came out to California to be a bodybuilder.
Oh, okay.
And then he ended up, I want to say it's UPW, which was Ultimate Pro Wrestling, was where he kind of got his start.
Oh, okay.
And his first character was known as the Prototype. And he would act like a robot. Looked like $1 million, but he was like the Prototype. And part of what he would do when he would like cut promos is he would like make a rewinding sound. I can't do it. And then he would repeat the same promo. So it would be like he's a prototype. And he was a heel, he was a bad guy, and, we would eventually, know Cena as the ultimate babyface, but, yeah, humble beginnings.
That takes some time to get to, though.
Yeah, and if I remember the story correctly, Bruce Prichard, who was, or still is, a good friend of Vince McMahon, who is in charge of WWE, was visiting Ultimate Pro Wrestling because we all know that Vince likes the bodybuilder types. Like, that's who he has always pushed basically throughout the entirety of his career is big guys, muscly guys, attractions, as Bruce Prichard has often described them in his podcast with Conrad Thompson, which is Something to Wrestle With, which I think is still on. Good listen for wrestling fans if you don't mind Bruce just being an asshole sometimes, because, my God, he's a natural heel.
Oh, okay.
But he's a good storyteller, so I do recommend it. Like, I'm not going to just shit on Bruce Prichard like a lot of people do and blame him for everything. Prichard, for those that don't know, among the wrestling community, has a very negative, had a very negative reception prior to his podcast. He was viewed as a yes man and a lot of other things that, like, if you actually listen to Bruce and other people who know Bruce, like Jim Ross, John Cena, they all talk about how Bruce would be the one who would argue the most with Vince out of anybody. Oh, okay. Because he and Vince were very good friends for a long time. But as the story goes, Bruce Prichard is the one who, quote-unquote, discovered Cena from the WWE perspective by visiting UPW. And Bruce has a really funny story where he told, he thought John was on steroids.
Oh, yeah?
And actually, called him out on it, the first time he met. And as far as we know, John has never taken steroids or any other type of performance enhancers outside of when he was recovering from surgery when they're prescribed. But John apparently held that against Bruce for a long time, and which is kind of funny where you realize that Bruce was one of John's biggest supporters for a long time within the WWE office. So one thing leads to another, and eventually Cena gets signed to WWE, where he goes to Ohio Valley Wrestling, OVW. And OVW is pretty important because it was the development territory. Like nowadays they have NXT, not
AEW?
No, not. I almost said NZXT, which is the
computer
brand.
Just NXT.
NXT,
yeah,
which is now their new quote unquote development territory. But at the time, in the early 2000s, OVW, based I want to say it was like Louisville, Kentucky, or that area, the Ohio Valley in Kentucky, not actually Ohio, the state. There was a pretty insane class of wrestlers at the time when Cena was there.
Oh, okay.
Leviathan, who would go on to be Dave Bautista, might know. More casual non-wrestling fans may know a bit about Batista. He's been in a lot of movies, Bond villain, Drax the Destroyer in Marvel, I Spy, a bunch of comedies.
Yeah.
And I think he was recently in Glass Onion.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Glass Onion. He was in the newest, I can't think of what the title's called, but it's the murder mystery.
The Knives Out?
Knives Out, thank you. I almost said something totally wrong.
Yeah, so he was also in Cabin in the Woods, the M. Night Shyamalan.
Oh, he was in Cabin in the Woods too? I didn't know that. Yeah, so there you go. But yeah, so Batista's made some news for himself. Also a pretty successful former WWE guy outside of it.
He also seems like an amazing human being, by the way.
He does. I've never met Batista. I've also never met John Cena. But word on the street is that they're among two of like the nicest people, like in real life, like good people. Again, that's just hearsay, but that's word on the street.
I just saw a recent, I don't know, like, I recently saw the video. I don't know how recent it was. He was, like, going over his, like, tattoos. So he has, like, a tattoo on his one arm. So, yeah, this used to be a tattoo, like, dedicated to my best friend, but then he turned out to be, like, a homophobe or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, my mom's gay, so then he, like, had it covered up and everything. He's like, and now we're no longer friends.
Yeah. No, his social media has always been very progressive, too, which is very unusual, especially in wrestling.
And no offense, but just looking at the guy, you don't think, like, super progressive.
No,
you know what I mean?
You really don't. But, yeah, Batista has an interesting story. We might have to do a podcast on him, too, because he has a very interesting story, as you kind of alluded to, like with just his background, how he got to where he was, and of course his unlikely rise to superstardom. And I would actually argue, maybe this might be a hot take, but out of like the three big wrestling stars, Batista, Cena, and Rock, I'd probably give the acting chops to Batista.
Yeah.
Just as far as like
different roles.
Yeah, his ability to like play any role.
Yeah, because I also have heard recently, too, he wants to be in, like, a rom-com.
Yeah.
But, like, no one's casting him for it.
Which is really weird because he's pretty freaking funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you, like, a little sidebar here, but for this past April Fool's Day, Batista posted a video advertising a Netflix comedy special. And it's the only April Fool's, like, prank that I actually fell for, like hook, line, and sinker until the end.
Because you were like invested all of a sudden.
Well, no, I was like, I was thinking because like Dolph Ziggler has done a comedy tour recently, and Mick Foley's been doing his like stand-up show, and like and there's been like other shows too, like Bruce Prichard has done a couple live shows before he went back to WWE, which is another story. So like I'm like, yeah, he could be the latest line of wrestlers who could be doing comedy, and like he's a big enough like name to where I could see Netflix signing him for something.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And then like as you watch it, it becomes more and more apparent that like he isn't really doing comedy, and then he ends up like power bombing a dude through a table. It's pretty great. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I think it's on Batista's Twitter. But yeah, so like again. Going back to Batista, Leviathan, he was Leviathan in OVW.
Okay.
Along with John Cena there. Another name who was there at the same time that you may know of is Randy Orton.
Okay.
Who also went on to be very successful and as a multiple-time world champion. And
RKO out of nowhere.
Yeah, the RKO out of nowhere, which went viral. Then, of course, last but not least, kind of rounding up this group, and there's a lot more names there, but these are the big four who were there, were Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, and Brock Lesnar,
all
at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Which, when you think about it, is pretty insane.
Yeah.
Like, to have those four individuals, all of which who not only went on to be huge successes in WWE, but also have fame outside of it as well, like be successful elsewhere. Lesnar, of course, famously went to the UFC and was pretty much unstoppable until health issues really hampered him. Multiple-time WWE champion, long-time WWE champion, usually the main event picture of like WrestleManias all throughout the 2010s. Then, of course, Randy Orton, again, multiple-time WWE champion, went viral for his RKO out of nowhere and just his athleticism. John Cena, we've already talked about, who's become a movie superstar, and Dave Bautista, same thing. Just a crazy lineup here in this OVW lineup in the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. So Cena ends up making his debut on SmackDown. He challenges Kurt Angle, who, if you don't know, is an actual Olympic gold medalist. He legitimately won gold for the United States in '96.
He makes sure you know.
Oh, yeah, 100%. But again, I'm assuming most of our listeners aren't hardcore wrestling fans.
No, I know. So I'm just saying that was his shtick as far as being a wrestler.
Yeah, he won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, but not as far as you would think. He actually did wrestle with a hurt neck and win gold. So, yeah, it's pretty impressive. Anyway, Cena makes a pretty big, splash. He takes Kurt Angle to the limit, almost beats him. Kurt does win, of course, proving that, like, if you book someone the right way, even when they're losing, it won't crush them. Cena kind of flounders for a bit on SmackDown, and believe it or not, almost gets fired.
Oh, okay. And was this his rapper persona at the time?
No, this was before his rapper
this is
persona.
before that,
He kind of flounders around, doesn't really have anything, because he comes in and does ruthless aggression, which is why they call this era of WWE the ruthless aggression era, based on a Vince McMahon promo from the time. And I know I've name dropped Vince a couple times. We're not going to dive into all of his crap, but we'll just say this, that Vince is not a good person with the sexual harassment shit. We'll just say that now. But he is very heavily entwined in WWE.
Yeah, no matter how you cut it.
So we're going to bring him up, but I just want to let you guys know we do not endorse his behavior, and we are not happy that he's back in WWE in any capacity, even if it's after the sale. Frankly, we think he needs to retire and step away. But, again, we just want to address that real quick because he will come up many times in this episode. So we want to be very clear where we stand. Don't hate, guys. Don't hate.
I just have my work clothes on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. But, so Cena ends up, basically being told, hey, he's going to get cut from the roster. Like, not even get fired, just released from his contract. And as the story goes, how this rapper persona came to be was he would come up with freestyle raps on the bus during, like, European tours and stuff like that. So he would just entertain the other wrestlers. And someone, I think it was either Jim Ross or Bruce Prichard, one of the two who were, the higher-ups in the office at the time, heard Cena do this and was like, let's bring it to Vince and see if we can get this on television. Like, let's turn him into, like, a white rapper character on TV.
Because he is white.
Yeah, and he's also really good. Like,
no, he's amazing. Yeah. Like, that's, I've heard him a couple times, and his freestyle rap skill is just on point.
Yeah, so allegedly, as the story goes, Bruce Prichard is with Cena, walking with Cena, trying to coach him on how to pitch this to Vince, and they bump into Vince in the hallway backstage at one of the shows. And Bruce just tells Cena to cut a rap on Vince. And he does out of nowhere. Just freestyles on him. And Vince doesn't believe that he, just came up with it on the fly. So Vince asks him to come up with another one, and he does. And another one, and he does. And that sells Vince. Okay, we've got something here. So Cena ends up basically turning heel and debuting as the Doctor of Thugonomics, where he would come out and he would cut raps on his opponents that he would just come up with at the top of his head, usually either right before he went out or while he was out there. And quickly establishes himself as a man who is untouchable on his promos. Dude is just super good. He comes out, the fans love to boo him, and eventually it gets to the point where he's, like a lot of heels, they start respecting him for his work, and they start cheering him instead of booing him. So he wins the U.S. title at WrestleMania. I think he beats Big Show for that. Then a year later, they have him against, I believe, none other than Triple H. It's actually, I think, JBL, who was WWE champion at the time. And JBL had been champion for almost a year at this point. It was the longest reigning champ in SmackDown history, as JBL would love to say over and over again. And Cena beats him for that and wins his first world title. I think it was against JBL. And I think his next, and at this point it's pretty obvious to anyone watching, Cena is now the man. He starts to slowly lose the Doctor of Thugonomics and becomes more about like hustlety, loyalty, and respect. He stars in the Marines, so he starts doing a lot of stuff for like the U.S. Marine Corps.
Yeah.
He also begins his career with Make-A-Wish around this time when he turns face, and he basically ends up going against, I think it was Triple H was his next like major opponent at WrestleMania the next year. And Triple H has been around the block for a long time at this point. He'd been in the company, I think, at this point for over a decade. Triple H had been the top guy on Raw for a long time, while Cena had been on SmackDown. And Cena ends up going over to Raw and feuding with Triple H. And this is where the infamous mixed reactions start, where people start to get sick of Cena. Like, the hardcores can't stand him, because it's pretty obvious at this point that he's going to be the champion no matter what. He's going to be pushed as this new superhero character. Whereas the women and the children love Cena. And against Triple H, who's a quote-unquote cool heel, who's been around for a long time and, was with Evolution and all this other, major big things, DX. This was before they did the DX reunion.
Okay.
Yeah, they end up... he's now like the cool heel, and so the hardcores are cheering Triple H and they're booing Cena, and this eventually leads Cena defeats Triple H. I think he ends up losing the title to RVD not that long later, in a very infamous match where they go into the ECW arena for One Night Stand, which is reviving the ECW brand. And if you don't know what ECW is Extreme Championship Wrestling, formerly known as Eastern Championship Wrestling. They had a hardcore following known for their extreme stunts in Philadelphia. And they were a smaller brand that actually had a partnership with WWE for a while, a secret one. That's another story we'll have to talk about later. And basically they brought back ECW in like 2005, I think, for one night only.
Oh, okay.
Because there was still ECW gone out of business in like 2001, same with WCW. And so, but there was still a really hardcore fan base for ECW. And they had a lot of ECW guys on the roster. So they did this One Night Stand where Rob Van Dam, who's one of the faces of ECW, cashed in Money in the Bank, and Cena, in one of the most memorable moments of his career, is getting booed out of the building. It's not even close. And Cena tries to throw his shirt into the crowd, and they actually throw it back.
Oh, wow.
And this happens multiple times. So Cena, tries to throw it a different part. They throw it back. So on, and this happens 3 or 4 times. And you can see Rob and Cena, Cena's in disbelief, but he thinks it's the funniest shit on the planet. And Rob is trying super hard, not to just be have this dumbest grin on his face, because he's loving this. And that's one of the most memorable moments. Cena would go on to become a tag team champion, U.S. champion, WWE champion, and he would be at the top of WWE for the better part of a decade, where he almost always had a title. His career starts to wind down around 2015. He wins the U.S. title and really starts getting, trying to put younger people over, which is a wrestling term for basically trying to win over other, maybe less notable, younger stars with the crowd. He's trying to make guys now. And now he's just a part-timer, where he only comes back for sporadic appearances, which is really weird given that Cena dominated programming for the better part from 2005 all the way until probably close to 2016. He was there every day, hardly ever injured, and even when he was, he always managed to come back ridiculously early. He made a very memorable return in the 2008 Royal Rumble, 4 months before he was scheduled to come back, and won the Rumble, goes on to challenge for the title, etc., etc. So that's kind of a brief overview of his wrestling career. He also had a very notable feud at the time with The Rock, because he was publicly calling out The Rock to try and get him to come back. Had 2 back-to-back WrestleMania main events with The Rock. Pretty big deal where The Rock and Cena, 2 of the biggest names at the time, aside from Stone Cold, to ever do it. And Cena's issues with The Rock was basically because The Rock left to go to Hollywood, and Cena didn't get that. Why The Rock would do that. And now, of course, a couple years later, Cena's getting older, harder to do what he does. He gets the appeal now. And he's since publicly apologized to The Rock, and I guess they've buried the hatchet, which is pretty cool. But Yeah, and now Cena went off to do movies, which we kind of covered extensively.
Yeah.
So I think that's a pretty good, summary of John Cena's career in WWE. We don't want to go into like too much detail, but I do want to get you start to talk a little bit more show during this pod, so it's not just me all the time.
Well, that's what they're here for, right?
What's your earliest memory of John Cena? Like, when was your first time you remember seeing John Cena?
I don't remember, like, specifically. I'm trying to remember. I know, he was in some of those early games we used to play a lot.
The SmackDown vs. Raw.
Yeah, and you can create your own character and stuff. But as far as, I vaguely remember, like, him, like, as, like, the rapper persona.
Yeah.
But I don't really remember too many of the promos. Because I think it was about this time, like, I wasn't paying too much attention to wrestling.
Yeah.
We watched it a lot I watched it a lot with you, though.
Yeah.
When we were kids and stuff. Which obviously I was still a kid at this point, but I remember watching some with him. But my main thing I remember too is just, he would come out just like in shorts.
Yeah.
He wasn't like in the
trunks.
In trunks or like a thong or whatever you want. Not the thong, but like the...
Yeah, tights.
Yeah, the
trunks
tights.
or tights, yeah.
shorts. It was like just regular ass shorts.
Yeah,
like,
it was denim shorts. He was wearing the jorts.
Uh-huh.
Fucking shorts, yeah.
And, way back in fucking... 05 or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was jorts and sneakers, I think. He wasn't even wearing wrestling boots.
Yeah.
He was literally doing that was like kind of a layover from his time as Dr. Thugonomics, where he come out with like the jerseys and wear the big chain. And...
Yeah, it just seemed like like homeboy just comes out, he'll take off his shirt and kick your ass,
mm-hmm.
And I always kind of just dug that persona. My most remembered Cena moment was him versus CM Punk. And then he did the Hurricane? Or Hurricane?
Oh, the Hurricane Rana, yeah, which was like Cena... For those who don't know what a Hurricane Rana is, imagine like if Shoshima could put like his legs like around my head and then spin me and flip me. Like basically use his leg strength to toss me in like a forward somersault. That's what a Hurricane Rana is.
But usually it's like the smaller, more like nimble guys doing moves like that.
And Cena's a big dude. I think he's like 6'4" or 6'5", and he's probably like 300 pounds.
Yeah. Of like pure muscle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been described pound for pound as the strongest wrestler in WWE. And when you see like some of his feats, like lifting Big Show, who is over 500 pounds, lifting Mark Henry, who's like 400, but like is a wide dude, and then putting like 300 plus pounders on his back at the same time. Like I think he did like because he would do like a fireman's carry finisher, which was the
F5.
FU, or it was the FU.
Yeah, at first, and then they changed it to the F5.
No, the F5 was Lesnar's. It became
Lesnar?
the Attitude Adjustment when they went PG.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, but it was the FU, which was a parody of Lesnar's F5.
Yes.
But yeah, so he would do a fireman carry, and he could like lift two 6'5", like 300 pounders on his shoulder, like on top of each other, then flip them both over, like just pure strength. He could deadlift people too. There's some really, really insane feats of strength Cena's done over his career. But yeah, that Hurricane Rana, like you see guys like Rey Mysterio, who's like 5'6".
Yeah.
Like maybe 180 pounds. They do that shit. AJ Styles is probably the exception. I think he's like 5'11", but like he's more built like me. He's a taller, leaner dude, and he can do shit like that. But
exactly.
AJ's also kind of like a once in a generation talent too. So yeah, but yeah, doing that like Hurricane Rana, and they also bust out a pile driver in that match if I remember correctly.
It sounds about right.
I think Punk did it on Cena.
Yes, yeah, because then Punk later does a pile driver to Cena.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, the pile driver, with some exceptions, was banned because a pile driver is literally lifting a dude up upside down and then dropping their head on the mat. So if you don't do it right,
you can destroy their neck.
Yeah, like that's what happened to Stone Cold. Was Owen Hart, who's like one of the greatest technicians of all time, made a mistake with the pile driver and just spiked Austin's head on the mat. So they actually outlawed it, and both Cena and Punk got chewed out for that. So yeah, but like that's one of the things too, like just with that match I want to mention is that Cena was known, and part of the reason the hardcores hated him was for his 5 moves of doom. Like he had a very limited moveset. Yeah. So when he busted out the Hurricane Rana, like you didn't see that ever.
No, especially from Cena,
But it is notable too that like kind of like Roman Reigns, who kind of got that same criticisms, like you look at like Cena's wrestling career, and if he had the right opponent, like he could have
do
incredible
anything if he
matches.
wanted to, yeah.
That match you're referring to with CM Punk was an hour long. He wrestled a full 60 minutes, which for a big dude like Cena is super impressive.
Yeah.
You know, and then he's also had some matches with Shawn Michaels that were phenomenal, but of course Shawn could wrestle a broom and make it look good. Punk was kind of the same way. He also had some really good matches with AJ Styles, who I mentioned, in like I think the mid-2010s. I think it was like towards the tail end of Cena's career when AJ came in. But, you know, Cena, again, like just he's really underrated in the ring. Like, yeah, he is basic, but he's not bad. Like, even when he had like big matches, like he had matches against like Umaga, which is where I remember him. That was like my first, was when he was feuding with Umaga, rest in peace. I remember some of his matches with Umaga were really good, and they had no right to be that good, like ever. Because, like, no disrespect to Umaga, but Umaga is a big guy, and he was a good big guy. But, like, you know, neither Cena nor Umaga at that time were like known for having like 5-star matches. You know what I mean? So, but yeah. So you remember him from, you remember the Hurricane Rana. That's the moment that stands out to you the most with him.
Yeah, as far as, especially in his wrestling career.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that's not a bad one as far as, you know, moments. Like, yeah, Cena busting out a Hurricane Rana is pretty insane. So what else do you remember, like, about Cena's run? Because, again, you weren't, like, the biggest wrestling fan as far as, like, weekly television. You watched on occasion. Like, we occasionally got pay-per-views together and stuff like that. But
yeah, like, we'd get together for some of the bigger stuff. And, like, I was kind of in the loop, like, with you and stuff. But, yeah, I just remember... Yeah, I do kind of remember, like, you know, he was rising up. And I do kind of remember the whole... Like, yeah, the hardcore's not liking him, but then, like, everybody else did like him, and it's just, you know, I felt like they were just hating on him for, like, being the cool kid now.
Yeah, let's go Cena, Cena sucks! Let's go Cena, Cena sucks! Unbelievable. Like, there's never been a champion, I think, that can
just kind of hold both ends of the crowd like that.
Yeah,
you know?
Which is pretty crazy to think about.
You
like,
know,
I think
half of them love him and the other half love to hate him.
Yeah,
you know.
and you know, Roman, I think, had a little bit of that, but not nearly the level or the length of time that Cena did. And in fairness to Roman too, like, they actually let Roman turn heel, and it was like the best thing for him. Like, they finally did it after like fighting it forever. But Cena, they never did. They never pulled that trigger on that. And, like, Cena's explained it, like, you know, it was because he was super popular with the kids. He was a top merch seller.
Yeah.
And they didn't have anybody to kind of replace him, which I don't necessarily think is true. When you look at, like, having Batista on the roster and, like, Rey Mysterio at the time.
Imagine Batista's a huge baby face.
Well, he was.
Was he?
Yeah, Batista was a babyface for the vast majority of his career, actually. At least on top. He was a heel to start, but... He, became a babyface, and his nickname online was Blandtista because his babyface was so boring.
I remember him just being a big angry dude. For the most part.
Yeah, well, that was when he was with, you know, he did that for Evolution, and he would turn heel like towards the tail end of his run in like 2010 or so against Rey Mysterio, who's a good friend of his. But there was like a 4-year period where he was a babyface, which in wrestling is a long time because, like, they're on, you know, 52 weeks a year. You know, sometimes twice, depending on the brand. So, like, you know, to be a heel or baby face for that long it's tough, and it's not easy. And, you know, Batista was really good in the role, don't get me wrong, but, you know, again, a lot of the hardcores nicknamed him Blandtista because, yeah, he was a face when he was world champion for much of his run.
Okay.
So, but yeah, that was the big issue, was that, you know, Vince and WWE, especially at that time, and even to this day, like, we still see a lot of that. They had a vision, and they would try to force it down fans' throats. And, you know, the hardcores would sped it up, but, you know, more casual fans didn't mind. And, you know, that's kind of what ultimately led, I think, to Cena's divisiveness for so long, was they never really let him turn heel in his career. Which is kind of unfortunate because traditional wrestling, knowledge, at least from me studying it, is that most of the top stars had great runs as both heels and baby faces.
Okay.
You know, Stone Cold Steve Austin was a heel, you know, before he became a baby face. And even then, like, when he was a baby face, he wasn't like a superhero. He was He flipped people off and attacked
Yeah.
officials and referees, and people loved him for it. It was a weird time. But like The Rock started off as like a really bland like baby face, Rocky Maivia, and then turned heel and joined the Nation of Domination, and it was the best thing for him. And then even like after, you know, he would turn again and become the heel leader of the corporation, which, you know, he spent a lot of time as a heel. And then when he came back, like after his initial Hollywood success, he came back as a heel and you know, tried to work with like Bill Goldberg and a couple other people like to build them up. So almost all of them like had, you know, heel turns, and you know, some were better than others. Austin had an awful heel turn in the early 2000s, but that's another story. But Cena never really turned heel. Like after he turned babyface, he was a heel basically for the rest of his, or a face rather, for the rest of his career.
Yeah. You know, and I do remember watching The Marine when it came out and like kind of seeing all that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it definitely influenced his persona in the wrestling, you know, in the ring.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually have that DVD.
Oh, okay.
I do own that DVD, The Marine.
They made like what, 3 of those movies then?
No, I think they're up to like 7 now.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Cena only starred in the first one though, but they did one with like Ted DiBiase, I remember, The Miz.
Yeah, The Miz. That's who I was remember. It was like number 3, I think.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do we're absolutely gonna have to do a podcast on The Miz at some point. He is probably the most interesting WWE superstar, at least personally to me, of all time.
Oh,
like,
okay.
He has an amazing story. He's someone who, like, Cena got, like, all the accolades, you know, and became, like, the baby face. Same with, like, Batista, you know, face of the company. But The Miz is someone who, he got, like, one WWE championship run, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
And while I'm happy he did get it, his run was not very good. It was not his fault. But if you look at, like, a lot of his work, and even, like, work he did with Cena, like, Miz has always kind of been this person who, first of all, never was put into a position to succeed and has succeeded in spite of that. And we'll talk a lot about him at some point. But yeah, The Miz is actually one of the few people to, I think, defeat Cena at WrestleMania.
Oh, okay.
Actually, yeah. And granted, it was how the whole like feud with The Rock got started, so he was kind of a means to an end. But yeah, he did technically have a W over Cena at WrestleMania. So.
Oh, okay.
Kind of impressive when Cena rarely loses. So, but yeah, so you didn't really follow his wrestling career as closely as I did, I assume, for Cena.
Yeah, no, not as closely. I mean, I know of it, you know, and I feel like most of the wrestling career, like I followed, a lot of it was through memes.
Yeah, yeah.
there was plenty of memes to go to help follow through.
Yeah, Cena also got, you know, he's also had a couple moments where he went viral because, you know, Cena's taunt was, "You can't see me."
Yep.
And so, you know, he, you know, has a lot of jokes about him being invisible, like in photos and stuff like that, and he's not actually there. I think he did a cricket wireless commercial.
Say the cricket commercial.
Where he was
just
actually
bust
invisible.
through the fucking wall.
Yeah.
Because they put the stand there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So there's like a John Cena standee, but then he can like see through the eye holes of the standee.
Yeah, and then he would break through the wall and surprise people. But he also did one where I think he was literally invisible, which is the one I was referring to.
Oh, my bad.
That one's also funny, and that went viral too. And then actually Cena got reversed on that. I don't know if you heard this story, but one of his Make-A-Wish kids survived and like beat his disease.
Oh, okay.
And then so Cena was getting interviewed like about his work for Make-A-Wish, and then they had the cricket wireless like wall, and then the kid broke through and surprised Cena. Yeah, it's pretty great. So yeah, Cena also did. You know, he also had a series of videos where it would start with something unrelated, and then it would cut, and his name is John Cena! Da, 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 da! And Cena was interviewed about that on one of the late night shows, and he was like, "Oh, it's another meme about me." You know, I'd be trying to like watch a video on like Facebook, because like this is when Facebook was like at a peak.
Yeah,
or something.
could you imagine?
And then it's like another meme about me. I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, being John Cena, actually interested in what the video it is or whatever, and then it's John Cena. No, it's not. It's not me. Yeah. I'm right here.
Yeah. So Cena went viral, and of course, you know, his acting career, you know, took off pretty substantially. You know, I think he's had some really good roles, and I think he's done really well for himself.
Did you ever watch the movie? I'm pretty sure it was called Cockblocked with John Cena, because it's like a comedy.
Oh, are you thinking Trainwreck?
Was it Trainwrecked?
Is that the one where I think he's with Rebel Wilson?
No.
Okay.
No, it's him. I can't remember any of the other actors that are in there, but he has a teenage daughter. So they're trying to make it so she doesn't sleep with her boyfriend. Throughout the whole movie.
Oh, wow. That's funny coming from Cena.
And then for whatever reason, I mean, I don't know how much we really care about spoiling this movie that came out like 5 years ago.
I don't think it's that big of a deal.
And it's not even like a huge spoiler because I think it was in the previews. For some reason, they like get into this like frat party or whatever party it was, and he ends up butt chugging beer. So they put the funnel in his butt and like dump the beer in there.
God.
And that's like a whole like part of the movie.
Wow, that's not something I need to know about. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome. Now I'm gonna drink some more of my beer.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know if I'm gonna touch mine after that one. Yeah, and but he was in. I think it was he was in a comedy with I think it was one of his earliest movies. I think it was called Trainwreck or something like that.
Okay.
And, I don't remember if it was with Rebel Wilson or Amy Schumer. I can't remember which.
I think
one.
Amy Schumer.
I think it was Amy Schumer. Yeah, I think you're right. Rebel Wilson, I think, was at the time doing the Pitch Perfect. Films.
And I think Rebel Wilson came out with a similar movie later, but it was different, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, I'm not really a huge fan of either. I don't dislike either. I just don't watch their movies. Yeah. That's all. I've seen Pitch Perfect 2 because the Green Bay Packers were in it.
Oh, no, it is specifically... I remember the movie now, because, then you just see John Cena's booty in that movie, too.
Yeah. He was... As Sean would say, show me your ass! And John's like, sure. But yes, Cena has, no shame, and that's something, from his bodybuilding days and his wrestling days, where he walked around in the Peacemaker costume to promote that movie. Just in public. He's willing to do anything for a good cause. So.
Yeah.
Another fun fact about John Cena, because I just remember this, is he speaks fluent Chinese.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's fluent in Chinese, and it's not something you ever expect. But he apparently took great strides to learn the language because of how important China is to the movie industry and of course WWE as well. So he went really above and beyond. We've already talked about his work with Make-A-Wish. The Make-A-Wish Foundation, but...
Yeah, that's something, too. He just looks like this big, dumb bodybuilder, but he's a really intelligent human being.
Yeah, he's very intelligent. In fact, he's considered very intelligent among his peers. But yeah, his movie career took off, and, he got the role of Peacemaker in Suicide Squad with James Gunn. James Gunn really has a thing of, taking a wrestler and just, making them a superstar in Hollywood. He's done that with Batista, and he did that with Cena.
Now Cena.
And Cena also played the villain in the Bumblebee movie, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, and he was fantastic in that. That's the first time Cena's been a bad guy in a long time.
Yeah.
And man,
But even that, he wasn't a hardcore villain in that one. He wasn't. He was just a military guy doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to being no, I'm going to destroy the whole world.
Yeah, and he was still the quote unquote bad guy.
No, of the movie he was. I'm just saying. But he still did it well.
Yeah, and then of course he played the villain in, I think it was it Fast 9? It wasn't Fast 8, because Fast 8 was the one where Cypher was introduced.
Wait, is he the villain, or does he end up becoming...
He
becomes a good guy, right?
Yeah, he becomes a good guy because he gets betrayed by Cypher, of course, and his partner, I think his name is Otto. But yeah, he's, so sorry for some spoilers for Fast 9, but if you haven't seen Fast 9 at this point, with Fast 10 literally coming out in a month.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, but not sorry. He plays the villain, Vin Diesel's brother, Jacob.
Oh, okay.
And he's one of the villains, and then he kind of gets betrayed and ends up reconciling.
I have not been keeping up with the Fast movies.
Yeah, I just recently watched Fast 9, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
It was one of those where it was oh, look, it's on. I'll watch it. Why
for some reason I thought he's been a good guy.
Well, he's going to be a good guy in this movie.
Yeah, but I thought it's he's been a good guy. I didn't realize he's finally going to be.
Yeah, no, he was the he was one of the three major villains in Fast 8 or Fast 9.
Okay.
Because it was originally him, his partner Otto, and then Cypher was involved as well. And I think Otto and Cypher end up betraying him. So that's what kind of turns him face in that. Plus a big misunderstanding, but yeah. Anyway, ignoring the many issues with the Fast Universe retcon where, Dom has a brother that he never talks about and never is brought up until the 9th film. Which I think technically it's the 10th because I think it came out after Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh yeah, well then, oh no, Tokyo Drift was a proper number movie, wasn't it?
It was. They retconned that in and retconned something in there too in Fast 9 as well, which we won't give away. But yeah, so needless to say, Cena's done pretty well for himself. You know, top guy in WWE for a decade, which was, you know, he was probably making millions there. You know, movie star now. And also, as we talked about, like, I think he's over 700 wishes. I think he's approaching 800 wishes granted for Make-A-Wish. Charity machine.
Yeah.
Media appearances, like you name it, he's done it all.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy to think about because, again, like, humble beginnings, starting off as the prototype.
Yeah.
Like, hard, where he was also accused of using steroids, which is really funny.
Yeah.
And just, man, it's just crazy to think, like, how much he's done. And we would be remiss to mention some moments of controversy in Cena's career. He hasn't had many, but he has had a couple, and most of them have come recently. The first earliest controversy I could remember was he was interviewed about steroid use in WWE, which was a long-standing problem, and WWE is still under scrutiny for that even to this day. And his interview was, I think it was with CNN or NBC or something. It was one of the biggest, you know, news corporations. But surprisingly, I don't think it was Fox, which, like, shocks me. But basically, it's a good thing WWE was also recording. Because when they released this interview, it was Cena, they quoted Cena as saying, you can never prove that I have. Regarding to, like, him taking steroids. And it looked really bad for Cena. Like, a lot of people were jumping on him because he's a big, muscular dude. So, of course, a lot of people think, oh, he's a steroid user. Well, when WWE released the full clip, Cena says, no, I've never used them. But he also then goes into detail about how the biggest problem is that you have to take a lot of people at their word unless, you know, you can catch them off guard with a drug test or something like that. So he gave, like, this really detailed, well-thought answer. Yeah. And the news just basically cut it to basically create controversy and at the same time almost defame Cena. Like, they took his words out of context, so it wasn't actually defamation. I can hear my lawyer friend screaming at me. But it was at best extremely misleading and trying to make Cena and WWE look bad. And I just want to throw this out there. You don't need to edit something to make WWE look bad. Just look through their history. Like, I swear to God. Like, just look at, like, what Vince has done, what they've aired on television. Katie Vick is the one thing I'll just say. Two words you can, if you're under the age of 18, don't Google this. But Katie Vick, like, just look up that. And there you go. Like, you don't need to make WWE look bad. You can just look through their history, and they have plenty of skeletons you can dig up. So, manufactured controversy there. The second piece was actually a really silly one, but it has to do with international politics. I mentioned that John Cena knows how to speak Chinese. Well, China is a very important player in the global stage. Yeah. China does not recognize Taiwan as an independent country, and in fact, because other countries don't want to piss off China, they also don't officially recognize Taiwan. Okay. But they'll all have diplomatic relations with them and treat them like they're their own country.
But yeah, on the books or whatever.
Yeah, like in the UN, you know, Taiwan is not like an officially recognized country. Okay. And that's to, you know, basically avoid pissing off China because China's really testy about that. Cena, in an interview, refers to Taiwan accurately as a country. I don't give a shit about China, personally. But, so I'll say it, Taiwan's a country.
I mean, China was a pretty good wrestler.
China was an amazing wrestler. We'll have to talk about China another time, too. But this pissed off China. That Cena would call Taiwan and refer to Taiwan as a country.
Who the fuck cares what John Cena like as a country? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, here's why is because Cena's involved in WWE and has connections and goodwill with China and is an ambassador. So Cena ends up issuing an apology, and of course, a lot of people who are like, like me, who's like, fuck China, are like, John, what the fuck? I'm not the type of person who's like going to rag on Cena for that, because I understand the business aspect that sometimes you have to like, it's a stupid game anyways. I think we've established with this whole like, all the other countries treat Taiwan and recognize Taiwan as it, but they don't recognize it officially.
Yeah.
But they act like it is, so it's like, it's a game. It's international politics, for those that don't know, is...
It's all about the game and how you play it?
No, that's Triple H. Wrong game.
Oh, my bad.
International politics, for those who don't know, is kind of just... A lot of it's optics. Mm-hmm. So you think, like, your government politics is bad, international's worse.
Yeah.
Like, because at least...
Well, yeah, because then you have different groups of countries, like, acting like little children with each other.
Exactly. So, and international law is... It's interesting if you like that stuff, but like I'll just tell you, it's a mess. So for those that don't, and so yeah, Cena kind of found himself in the middle of a bit of an international incident because of that. And then
because he called a country a country.
Yeah, because he called the country a country, but because of all the business ties to China, he had to issue a retraction. So that was another thing. So again, two things that are not really major and not his fault. But here's kind of the one where Cena really put his foot in his mouth, and it was talking about Vince McMahon, who had just been pushed out of his own company due to mistreatment of women, inappropriate sexual relations.
Due to reasons.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And Cena tried to defend Vince and his behavior. And I understand that Vince and Cena have a close relationship.
Yeah.
I understand.
Vince gave him his quote-unquote big break.
Big break. He might feel indebted. But man, like, there was a time and place.
Yeah.
And... neither the time nor the place, and really inappropriate, no matter what your personal relationship is, to defend that kind of behavior.
Yeah.
And it really is, in my opinion, the only true black mark that I've seen from Cena. Like, the real one where I'm like, man, that's something where I'm like, if it wasn't for the fact that you have like 700 Make-A-Wish all this charity involvement, all this goodwill built up, like, man, it's not a good look. And I don't think Cena's ever apologized for it, which is really unfortunate. And it's just something that, again, we want to acknowledge. We talked a lot about like all the good he does. We have to acknowledge, the controversies that, yeah, unfortunately he got caught defending Vince, and, it sucks, but, I understand that that's a relationship there, and, you want to believe in your friend and your boss who, for a long time, who gave you your big break and made you a millionaire and set you up for all your other success, but defending any type of, inappropriate sexual relations like Vince had, and to use his power and authority to, pay hush money payments and stuff, and business fraud is not a good look.
Yeah. And
there's just no defending it. So I'm not going to. But yeah, kind of a downer on that, and it's unfortunate because, as we've said, outside of it, like, that's really seen as only like really big mistake, I think. And I'm not the type of person who lets one bad thing, especially because it's not like Cena was making the hush money payments. Like that would be different.
Yeah.
But like making a poor defense of someone who is, like, that's a fine line. Some people aren't going to be able to forgive Cena for that. Now that's totally understandable. I am not going to be the type of person who's going to sit here and rag on him for that with all the other good work he's done over his career. But I'm also not going to pretend that it's okay either.
Yeah.
It's one thing I'm like kind of has lowered Cena's stock in my eyes. It's bad take, man. Bad take. And that's really all I can say about it. We have been going here for just about an hour. We're about 53, 54 minutes in at this point. Do we kind of want to... Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, Show, or...
No, not really too much. I mean, because I know we did the other wrestling podcast. I don't know if I talked too much about, who my more favorite wrestlers are.
Yeah, well, we actually didn't air that episode. That's one of the lost episodes, because that episode, for those that don't know...
My bad.
Dived really deep into the weeds of the negatives in the wrestling. And we listened to it, and it was just not... I'm going to be honest. I made the call, it was not a good episode. We will probably do a wrestling episode at some point, but like we talked with Grayson, I think off air about this too. Like,
Yeah.
wrestling's a hard topic to cover because of how
much mud there is to go through too.
Like you want to remember the good, but like there's a lot of wrestling stuff that just has not aged well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it not even wrestling, just the way they conducted business,
Yeah.
And whatnot. But yeah.
So. Yeah.
But yeah, no. I mean, Cena, like as a wrestler, I always liked him. In his movies, he's been doing pretty good. I still haven't watched The Suicide Squad or Peacemaker.
Oh man, you're missing out.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
You're missing out.
Maybe that's something. I've been trying to figure out what to watch next now that The Mandalorian's over.
I will say it. The Suicide Squad is, at least in my opinion, the best DC film to come out in a long time.
Oh, okay.
It's a very fun, enjoyable ride. If you like Guardians of the Galaxy, it has a lot of the same vibes to that.
Oh, okay.
And Cena and is it Idris Elba or is it Idris Elba?
Idris Elba, I think.
Idris Elba.
Now that you ask me, I'm questioning myself. I'm pretty sure
can
it's
never
Idris
remember
Elba.
the pronunciation, so a big apologies to Mr. Elba.
To Mr. Knuckles himself.
Yeah, but
I still haven't watched that movie either.
Dude!
I know, I'm behind.
Dude! Like, I'm gonna have to disown you!
Kids make it hard, man.
Okay, fair. You're on probation.
But now my kids are starting to get old enough. We actually went and watched the Mario movie the other day. You were there with us.
Yeah, I was there. I actually, your daughter sat with me the entire movie.
I know, right? Because I walked in late,
Uh-huh.
and she was right in your lap. She's like, I'm not moving. I'm watching this movie. Damn it.
Well, to be fair, the popcorn was also right next to me. So
Yep. And they love them some popcorn.
They do. That's Haseo's fault.
But
we like to blame Haseo for a lot. No, that's like legitimately his
they
fault.
love popcorn before, but he just feeds into their addiction.
Yeah. Well, like I said, that's his fault.
Yeah, no, they loved the Mario movie.
Yeah, it was fun. She was great, by the way. Like, she's not even 2 yet, right?
Nope.
She didn't like hardly utter a peep the entire movie. She was like glued onto it. It was amazing. But yeah,
You were saying Idris Elba though.
yeah, like he and Cena and Elba have an amazing, amazing chemistry in that movie, the Suicide Squad together. They're fantastic. And
Oh, okay.
Elba, God, like I know this isn't an Elba podcast, but like he's amazing in everything he's in.
Oh yeah.
I legitimately like, even if the movie's bad, he's great. Mm-hmm. And I am like so pissed that they are not considering him for Bond anymore.
I know.
He would have been perfect.
Yeah.
So, but that's another story. So with that said, final thoughts on John Cena?
Yeah, I mean, it does suck, the whole defending Vince, and maybe he doesn't want to defend him, but he's doing it for other reasons we don't know. I'm not trying to make it sound better.
No,
I'm just saying we don't know the full story.
We don't, and we probably never will.
Yeah, but
But
like you were saying earlier, though, he's done so much good. He seems like such a great human being, other than that like one main instance.
yeah,
That I still enjoyed him. I mean, yeah, a lot of my meme culture started with John Cena memes.
dun 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 dun.
So yeah, it's just so hard to find him sometimes. I'm just saying.
I mean, Invisible Man, hard to see. Yeah, I kind of want to echo you. Like, I think I've already said my piece on the recent controversy with Cena, but Cena, for the vast majority of his career, has done a lot of good. There's one video that I'll never forget, because this was at a time when it was not popular to do so. Cena released what was essentially a PSA about the United States and treating people better. Mm-hmm. And, he's come out as a supporter of the LGBT, community, just like Batista. Batista's way more vocal about it than Cena is, but Cena released this really good movie where he talks about, like, picture your average American, and then it's like, he points out that like 51% of the country is women, so it's actually, the average American is more likely to be a woman than it is a man, which is a very big misconception. And he just like made these really, really great arguments about like how diversity and respecting people for who they are and what they do, whether you're gay, black, Hispanic, whatever, right? And it's a really, really powerful message. And that's why I think for me, I was so disappointed with the recent controversy, because Cena does know better. He's put out that message his entire career. So
yeah,
I don't know what it is. And again, if that's a line too far for you watching, again, no hate from me. I, however, am willing to put it up to just a mistake in a effort to defend someone he's known his entire career.
Yeah.
But again, like you pointed out, we don't know the full story. We probably never will. So, but for me, yeah, Cena, I think he's done a lot of good. His U.S. title run, where he did a series of open challenges, really helped elevate or spotlight a lot of guys. And, a lot of people come back and they want to, that they let ego get the better of them. And Cena never really seems to have done so. Like, I'm sure there are moments, and I've heard stories like backstage of like, him making decisions, but he never comes across as that guy in public or any of his public appearances anyway. Yeah. And, that's impressive given you have a lot of people like the Paul brothers, for example, who go out of their way to be assholes publicly, and that's how they get attention. Where Cena basically built his entire career doing the opposite of that.
Yeah, doing the right thing.
And, for me, I just feel that's worth acknowledging because we don't see that a lot. Mm-hmm. I think that's honestly what the Paul brothers have done is take the easy way. You know, be a jerk, be an asshole, step on others to get ahead. Mm-hmm. I think we see that all too often nowadays. And so, with the exception of the Vince thing, like, Cena's path, I think, is the more difficult one. Mm-hmm. And, I do wish him well. I'm happy for his success. And I'm grateful for all the memories he gave. Mm-hmm. I really am. Because, while it may have been cool to hate on Cena, for me, was kind of the core wrestler that got me hooked into my love of wrestling.
Okay.
So I owe a lot to him. Mm-hmm. And, I've since kind of moved on from Cena. I have, as I've looked at like older stuff, but being introduced to wrestling, Cena was the guy, and he was the guy for pretty much as long as I was a hardcore fan watching weekly. Yeah. But, yeah, a pretty interesting career. Definitely something that... just weird that he started off as like this prototype, almost one-dimensional, and then almost gets fired and turns out to be arguably the biggest superstar since Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock. Like, who would have guessed? Mm-hmm. But with that being said, I think, was there anything else you wanted to add? Or
no, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay. I guess we'd be remiss to mention that John Cena has a rap album.
Oh, yeah.
From his time as Dr. Thugonomics. Mm-hmm. So it's available, I think, on Spotify. You can listen to it. He also rapped his own opening theme, The Time Is Now. Dun, 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 dun. He did the lyrics to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you get a chance, check it out. But I think we're good to wrap up here. Thank you very much for watching. And we'll be back again next week with another episode. What it is about, we don't know yet. We'll find out.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
You'll know when we know.
We'll know when we know. But hope is we'll have a couple special guests coming up pretty soon. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, as always, my name is Shenzo the Lost. You can find me at Shenzo the Lost pretty much everywhere. Again, assuming this line seems to be getting old, but assuming Twitter's still standing by the time this episode comes out. You can find me there on Twitch, on YouTube. And you can find him at Zachary1016 or at Shoshima1016 at Twitter and Twitch, respectively. So without further ado, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you all next time. Bye-bye! Bye!